The Royal Rumble 2026 was really weird, but that was never going to be a surprise. WWE hosted this year's Royal Rumble in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which was a fairly unprecedented decision. WWE's partnership with the Saudi government and its Ministry of Sport began in 2018 with the Greatest Royal Rumble. Oh, so they did host a Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. Yeah... And no. It was hosted in April. This stuff tends to happen in January or February. Instead of 30 competitors, there were 50 competitors. And instead of a WrestleMania main event, the main event winner got a belt and a trophy that were never seen again. This event marked the beginning of a 10-year partnership between the company and the Saudi Arabian government. As part of this deal, WWE hosts at least 2 pay-per-view events in the country per year. In case you don't know, Saudi Arabia is a Middle Eastern country that is allied with the United States of America. It is an absolute monarchy and is known for having a, let's say, poor record of human rights. They especially came under fire in 2018 when journalist and Saudi Arabian dissident Jamal Khashoggi was murdered and dismembered by agents of the Saudi royal government. The murder of Jamal Khashoggi was major international news, and there were people both within and without the US urging WWE to break this partnership. They didn't, obviously. And unfortunately, that moment in time is kind of the most backlash and the most scrutiny they have gotten over this deal. Since then, it's just kind of chugged along as just another of the many unsavory things that WWE has been involved in. Another thing that's unsavory about this whole thing, although on a completely smaller scale, is how we got to this point where the Rumble is being hosted in Riyadh. See, when WWE first started putting on these events, they were, for all intents and purposes, non-canon. These were glorified house shows where novelty matches like John Cena versus Triple H in 2018 or 19, whatever it was. Over time, however, these events became more significant in WWE's creative plans. And over time, these events have become extremely normalized, both within WWE and outside of it as well. Slowly coming up to the point where WWE can host not only one of their biggest annual traditions, but a show that has major implications for WrestleMania, their biggest show of the year. Very slowly and insidiously over time, Saudi events were moved from completely irrelevant story-wise to now hosting very central events. And this was a progression that was done very intentionally. WWE did everything they could to slowly but surely normalize these shows and this partnership to the point where the Riyadh Rumble really didn't make a lot of noise or have a lot of backlash conceptually. There is a lot of backlash coming out of the show, but that was mostly due to the creative decisions, which shows just how successful this very sneaky method by WWE has been. Also, growing amounts of the public are extremely disillusioned. Nihilism has become very popular as a survival tactic. Still, I think it's important to open the video both with this context and with an acknowledgement that this is abnormal and shouldn't be seen as normal. Even if you think, especially with WWE's current regime being so cozy with the current US administration, that the evil of the United States is not meaningfully different from the evil of Saudi Arabia, this is fundamentally different from hosting shows in the US, because this is a paid deal to produce propaganda for Saudi Arabia. This is part of a strategy by the Saudi Arabian government to diversify economically, but also to wash their image as a country with very poor human rights with all of these entertainment endeavors. This became especially prevalent through 2025 with the Riyadh Comedy Festival and the opening of Mr. Beastland in Riyadh. And yeah, it sucks. On with the show. Okay, only kind of, because I have to talk about the venue, actually. So the stadium that the Royal Rumble was hosted in was put up over the last 30 days. Like, at the start of the month, it was a dirt lot, and now it's a stadium. This quick turnaround time does raise eyebrows, and it's not unprecedented. Mr. Beastland, or Beastland, the YouTube park, was also built very shortly and was designed to be taken down after 45 days of operation. And supposedly these projects are built with pieces that are designed to be very easy to put together. What little I've read about it, it seems to be like these are a lot of pre-made parts that are locked together, and then you have a stadium. I guess. I don't know. As I said, I don't have enough knowledge to speak on this definitively. I just think that it is worth mentioning, especially because WWE has been very open about this quick turnaround time. So hopefully the working conditions were solid enough, because if not, ugh. I can say definitively that the lights that they put in the seating areas were a very bad decision. I don't know why they're there, but there were these lights that reacted to like wrestlers' music and Titantrons located in the crowd. The problem being that you only see the lights and you can't see the people, and it makes the seats look empty. This, combined with the fact that the WWE didn't even announce the show's attendance on the show, which is very out of character for them, wasn't a good look. It was something that bothered me through the whole night because it just looked bad. Let's talk about the show. The show proper began with the Women's Royal Rumble. If you're not familiar with the concept of the Royal Rumble, welcome. How are you here? These are 30-person battle royals where one person enters at a time. If you're thrown over the top rope, you are eliminated. The winner gets a world title match at WrestleMania. In the fine print, it's a WrestleMania main event, but like, you are not guaranteed to be in the main event. So let's just say world title match and leave it at that. And this Women's Royal Rumble match was solid, I think. There was some fun character stuff at the beginning with Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. They've had a fun, unlikely tag team thing going on throughout the year. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's very over and a lot of people like it, and it was cute in this match. The problem is the middle of this one really dragged. Part of that is the usual Royal Rumble, a lot of the big entries don't come out until the final 10 entries, but there were also just very few eliminations in this match, and it made for a middle stretch that was extremely uneventful. By the time number 30 came out, there were still 14 people in the ring, nearly half the field, and that is a lot for this point in the match. So the middle was very dull, but luckily the final act really picked up and was very fast-paced and exciting and was very focused. The biggest winner of this match to not actually win the match was Lash Legend. She is a tall woman. She was on NXT for a couple of years and recently got called up to SmackDown. She's very new, but she's solid in the ring, and seeing this kind of concerted push, like she got 5 eliminations in the match, some of which were major stars, which is good because the SmackDown women's division needs depth. And in the end, the winner was Liv Morgan. First of all, I want to shout out the ending sequence on the edge of the ring. Liv Morgan has made it to the final of a lot of Royal Rumbles, and she always does this like ledge stuff that I think is really cool and exciting. I think she's a really solid choice. Over the past few years, she's become a really reliable upper card heel. How good her matches are kind of depend on who she's paired up with, but she's become really good in the ring. And she's like a good character. She's really messy, and she has a lot of possible storylines going into WrestleMania. I think it's going to depend on the follow-up, but I think this is fresh choice is the wrong word, because Liv has been at the top of the women's division for a while, but I still think this was a good decision for the Rumble, and it's a good decision going into WrestleMania. Hopefully the build isn't just lore with Dominic Mysterio, because I don't think women's storylines need to revolve around romance angles, especially ones that involve the male superstars. But we'll see how this goes. Next on the card was AJ Styles versus Gunther. This was the match of the night, easily. AJ Styles' career was on the line, and he lost, which was kind of surprising. And I think purely in a kayfabe sense, it was surprising, but in an outside metatextual sense, there were a lot of people moving like this guy was done either with wrestling or with WWE. A couple of early sentimental posts. John Cena's Instagram has been entirely AJ Styles for like a week. And in case you didn't know, AJ Styles is an extremely influential wrestler in the same generation of John Cena, but for a lot of his career, he wrestled outside of WWE. TNA, Ring of Honor, New Japan Pro Wrestling. These were where AJ Styles made his name before he came to WWE in 2016 at the Royal Rumble exactly a decade ago. And Gunther is the man who retired John Cena. He retired Goldberg, and now he's got a whole I retire people thing going on, which is good. I think if they recycled the Legend Killer gimmick every generation, that would be really good. You got these fucking old guys around, let somebody younger kill them, them. And Younger's not the youngest guy on the roster, but like he's such a good villain. And the ending of this match was so good because AJ really made people believe that he was going to get out of that sleeper. So when he went limp and the bell rang, there was legitimate heartbroken silence, which is my favorite reaction in wrestling because it is so rare. Usually when something people don't want to happen happens, they just boo. So for them to be shocked and heartbroken like this, fantastic. The crowd all night was obviously kind of here or there, as like all international crowds are. They're gonna have the things they really latch onto and the things they're really familiar with and the things they're really not familiar with. I thought the crowd was solid. Maybe they were a little disengaged during the women's rumble, but when they were given things to cheer for, I think they were pretty generous still. And here they were absolutely fantastic. This is really good for Gunther. I think he has the potential. I think he actually already is one of wrestling's all-time great villains. And so booking him strong like this and giving him these shock heartbreak wins are only going to help him and are only going to help the company because, hey, whoever beats this guy is going to be instantly made. As long as they have, like, a guy who needs it actually beat him instead of someone who doesn't need the win get the win. But why would they do that? And yeah, the post-match of this was really interesting. When a wrestler has a retirement match like this, a lot of the time they'll leave their gear or their boots or what have you in the ring, and AJ Styles teased doing that, but then he just put his little gloves back on and then he walked to the back, which is interesting and implies one of two things. Either A, this is part of some really weird WrestleMania build where even though AJ Styles lost a retirement match fair and square, he's just going to keep wrestling in WWE. Again, that would be really weird and would defeat the purpose of booking the retirement match, you would think. Or he's going to continue wrestling outside of the WWE. Now, this is the one I personally want to see happen, but only in a particular way. So, assuming he does wrestle outside of WWE, which is where things seem to be going, there are two directions that can go in. AJ Styles could go to TNA. Now, TNA is the company that he was with for the bulk of his early career. It was where he made a lot of his early name. He left in the early 2010s because frankly, it was TNA, and they didn't treat him or book him very well, despite the backbone that he was for their brand. And so him coming to TNA in 2026 would be kind of an interesting way to bookend his career, as it were, because AJ Styles has said that 2026 is going to be his last year as a professional wrestler. Here's the problem. TNA in 2026 has a partnership with WWE, which has manifested as them getting NXT's lower mid-card onto TNA and getting a lot of their top talent poached by WWE. The second problem is that it's TNA in 2026, and that is very much beneath AJ Styles in 2026, especially in his retirement year. TNA recently got a TV deal with AMC, and their debut episode was roundly criticized. But if AJ wants to do a few matches in TNA, like, fine, I get how it's a bookend, whatever. What would be cool is if he went to other companies that he either has or has not wrestled before. Maybe a couple of New Japan dates. Maybe some things in AEW where he could face some pretty cool names, both from his past and ones that he hasn't faced before. I don't know. I'm not going to say AJ Styles in AEW or New Japan in 2026 is super likely because it feels like extremely wishful thinking until it happens. But losing this match was step one. So hopefully it's going to be a pretty interesting few months to see where AJ goes from here. And hopefully it can be the topic of a future video. Because, I mean, wherever this guy wrestles, I am probably seated because it's his retirement year. And he's really fucking good, even still. This was the match of the night. AJ Styles and Gunther are both extremely talented wrestlers. Gunther is on an absolute roll as a detestable heel villain, and this only helped with that regard. The finish was really, really well done, with AJ desperately reaching toward the rope and then passing out. It's good match. I gave it like a 4 out of 5. Next on the card was Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn for the WWE Championship. It sure was a world title match at the Royal Rumble. So historically, because the Royal Rumble match has major implications for what the world champion is doing at WrestleMania, what the world champion is doing at the Royal Rumble is usually some filler shit before we get to the WrestleMania build, and this seems like it was no exception. Don't get me wrong, I think Sami Zayn is absolutely fantastic, and that motherfucker made me believe in this match that maybe he had the chance of finally winning and finally getting a world title in this company, but that didn't happen. And, you know, the only thing this match could have really done to interest me would have been a shock win for Sami, because these guys have wrestled legitimately a dozen times, and Sami hasn't won literally any of them. And for what it's worth, Drew McIntyre is very obviously kind of a, if not a transitional champion, a placeholder champion. Like, he's kind of the guy holding the belt before Triple H figures out the guy who's going to hold the belt for 2 fucking years, because that's the only way he really books world titles. It also seems pretty obvious that they don't know what their WrestleMania matches are yet. You get that impression both from this booking of the world title and also the booking of the Royal Rumble matches, where a lot of the possible feuds that came out of, like, who eliminated who don't really seem like WrestleMania programs. But yeah, Royal Rumble world title match was filler. The men's Royal Rumble was the true main event of the night, A, because it went on last, but B, because it was the biggest question mark behind this whole event. So listen, in today's internet climate, at this point in WWE's season, there is usually a decent idea amongst reporters and the fan base what the main events of WrestleMania are likely going to be. You know, in the past few years, it has been precedent that the world title matches at WrestleMania have been planned at least this far out. This year, that wasn't the case. There is no definitive report on this is the plan for this championship, this is the plan for that championship, this is definitely what's main event this night or that night. There's just been nothing credible and nothing definitive that has come out in relation to that, and you can really feel that uncertainty. Well, A, because the WWE Championship recently changed hands outside of a pay-per-view, which tends to indicate that some kind of emergency button has been pushed. And while the women's division, I would say the SmackDown women's division isn't healthy, but the Raw women's division has plenty of stars who you can feasibly move around in certain places and make pretty compelling WrestleMania matches with. The men's division is getting very old. All of the stars in the men's division were either established guys 10 years ago who are still in their spot, or guys who have recently come into prominence but are still in or approaching their 40s. And then you have just like this sea of guys in like the upper mid-card who are theoretically at a main event level but haven't won a world title or done any major accolades recently. The upper echelon is guys like Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, these guys with name value and establishment. And basically the big story that we're looking at going into the Royal Rumble is, hey, WWE really needs to build young male stars because they don't have any guy under the age of 35 in their main event scene currently. And what they booked for the beginning of this match seemed to be a response to that very conundrum. Numbers 1 and number 2 were, number 1, Obafemi. This is a young guy who has been on NXT. It has been recently announced that he is called up to the main roster, even though that his run hasn't properly started yet. And he's fucking great. Look at this guy. He's huge, and he's charismatic, and he can wrestle what good. So, fuck it, give him the keys to the kingdom, and you'll probably have him in the top spot for like 20 years. This is a guy who's ready to be at the next level. All you have to do is give him a really strong push tonight and going into the WrestleMania season. Guy number 2 is Braun Breaker. This is another very young, very large guy who a lot of people have earmarked as, hey, this is your guy to main event the next few WrestleManias. Now would be a pretty good time to pull some kind of trigger on him. If not through a Rumble win, then through at least a strong Iron Man showing in the Royal Rumble. Unfortunately, number 2, Braun Breaker, during his entrance, was attacked by a hooded figure. This has to be the 5th hooded figure attack in the last calendar year. I know this is pro wrestling, but that's a lot. That's a lot of this specific thing happening in a very short amount of time, and it reeks of creative bankruptcy. And like, who's the guy behind the mask? I don't know. I don't really care either, because the masked man is either Seth Rollins, who has been out injured and is another one of these guys in the main event scene who's kind of tired, or it's some fucking other guy in the Vision, and this stable is dog shit. I have no interest in it. I have interest in Braun Breaker. I think he's the only worthwhile guy in the goddamn Vision, because then there's Bronson Reed, who is cool, but is like a big monster guy. So big monster guys, while they're treated pretty well in WWE, also kind of had a ceiling on them. Then there's Washington Theory, who sucks. He's bad. I'm not going to spend any more breath on him. And Logan Paul. YouTube sensation Logan Paul. And like this whole faction, the only reason it looks like this specifically is because Seth Rollins got injured. So for him to be the man behind the mask, hey, that makes sense. But if this is how we're going to do this whole angle, it's a bad fucking idea, because it would have been a really good night for Braun to get a good showing in the Royal Rumble to really put over that, hey, this is a big main event player right now. Instead, the hooded figure gave him a stomp. That's Seth Rollins' move! Threw Braun in the ring, and then he was immediately eliminated. Mind you, Braun Breaker versus Ovemi, two really big guys, would have been cool face-off and could have been a cool way of saying, hey, we're entering a new era. Here are two young guys with a lot of upside facing off at the start of the Royal Rumble. Really big statement moment is what this could have been. And instead, we did some hackneyed mystery man bullshit to get Braun out of the match. I think it was a really bad idea. I think that they weren't playing to their strengths. I think this is overbooking. We don't need a masked man mystery going into WrestleMania, especially because the whole thing with the goddamn Seth Rollins story for the whole time was there was a masked man who people thought was Seth Rollins, and then it didn't turn out to be him, and now we're just running it back for no fucking reason. For no fucking good reason. Well, Braun Breaker's gonna have a match with Seth at WrestleMania, and it's gonna put him over really bigly. You know what else would have put him over? A fucking world title match at WrestleMania, cause these guys aren't gonna be in their mid-20s forever. And it was a really frustrating decision. Now here's the positive. The young guy that did stay in the match, Obafemi, he went on a good run. He got a shit zillion number of eliminations. He should have lasted until the end of the match. He didn't. Whatever. Yeah, outside of that opening fiasco, this Rumble trudged along pretty well. Cody Rhodes came in at 11, which is pretty early for like a major this guy could win the match. By the way, in terms of young guy watch, Trick Williams, really over, really good. Javon Evans, he springs real nice. Also really good. He had an especially good showing. He made it to the last like 9 people. And he's only like 21, 22. So this is a guy who you can give a decent showing to, but you don't have to give the entire world right now. I thought he was pretty well booked in this. A decent amount of the mid-match was taken up by the Vision, which I have established as a faction that does not speak to me, and the only part of it that did speak to me was fucking Braun Breaker, and he was thrown out technically before the match even began. So, cool stuff there. In at number 22 was Brock Lesnar. Let's talk about Brock Lesnar. Quick overview on Brock Lesnar if you didn't know him. He debuted for the WWE in, I believe, 2002. He was pushed as the next big thing. Again, he was another really young guy who was really big and had a really good look. And hey, they gave him a really strong push out of the gate, and then he was a star for like the rest of his career. Fucking fancy that. He exited the WWE in the mid-2000s, came back in the early 2010s, at which point he held the world title hostage as pretty much a part-time professional wrestler. He would not show up for the TV. He would show up for pay-per-views. He very rarely lost. When he won a belt, you know it wouldn't be on TV for a few months. And then he He disappeared from company canon in 2023 because he was named in the sex trafficking lawsuit that was filed by Janelle Grant against Vince McMahon. This was the lawsuit that caused Vince to step down from his role in creative and eventually as a part owner of the company. While Brock is not a defendant in the suit, he is named as someone with whom Vince tried to allegedly essentially prostitute this woman who worked for him out to. While the alleged counter never occurred, being named in such a way in such a scandalous lawsuit, they took Brock off TV for a little bit. And I say took him off TV. He wasn't involved with the company for that amount of time. Brock came back at SummerSlam 2025, attacking John Cena, and they just didn't need to do it. We don't have to pretend that it's at all surprising that WWE brought someone back into the fold, even though they have alleged ties to this sex crime scandal that is alleged. But it is disappointing, A, because it's morally disappointing, and B, the world, I think, has completely moved on from the need for Brock Lesnar and has been past that need for a long time. I don't think he moves any needles. I don't think he sells any tickets. I don't think he sells any pay-per-views. I think bringing him back was completely superfluous. And since they brought him back, he hasn't even been on TV. He will shoot one angle for one thing, and they will say, this match is scheduled for fucking WrestlePalooza, and then Brock won't be on TV. The match won't be mentioned. It'll just happen a couple weeks later, and then it'll be gone and non-canon again. It's this really weird half measure where WWE, let's face it, is courting a certain audience by bringing back this very controversial figure after this specific scandal. They are selecting for an audience that doesn't really mind the alleged sex crimes so much. But at the same time, they don't want the full brunt of the backlash that comes from bringing on a guy like that, and so they feature him as little as possible. Case in point, he was announced for this Royal Rumble, but he wasn't announced on any WWE TV. He was announced on the Pat McAfee show. If you're not even going to use this guy on TV, or if you're not going to use this guy in order to, say, get some younger guys over, because Brock isn't a young guy anymore, then what's even the point of having him? And then he gets into this match, and he eliminates two guys, Ilya Dragunov, who is a really good wrestler, really young wrestler, cool guy. Would have been cool for him to get some good offense against Brock Lesnar. He didn't. He eliminated Obafemi. I think that's the wrong decision. Now, it is entirely possible and likely that they are building to a match of Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, which, like, I don't want to see, but I do understand the logic behind it. Brock was a big, large meat man for all of his career, so you want to have the new big, large meat man kill the old big, large meat man. But there's also every possibility that Brock just completely vanishes from the product from this point on, because even when he doesn't have this kind of allegation floating around him, he just kind of disappears for long periods of time as he sees fit. So hey, maybe having him be eliminated by Oba instead would have been a good way to guarantee that he gets something out of this interaction that happened. The really weird part was Brock's elimination. Brock was eliminated by Cody Rhodes and LA Knight, both like double teaming him, which, first of all, wrong choice of guys because neither of them really need it. Cody Rhodes is more than fully established. He has main evented the last 3 WrestleManias. He doesn't need any kind of rub or any kind of benefit from eliminating Brock Lesnar from the Royal Rumble. LA Knight, while he's not an established guy in that same way, as I mentioned, he's kind of in upper mid-card purgatory right now. He is not going to get any more over or any more credible with the fans by eliminating Brock Lesnar. He already has a ton of appeal. He's not a guy that fans need convincing to cheer for, so it's really weird to put him in that spot as well. But the really weird thing is when it happened, because it happened smack dab in the middle of Jey Uso's entrance. I don't know why they did this. Maybe it was an accident. It would be a fair accident because Jay's entrance is 20 fucking minutes long, but while Jay is in the crowd doing his yeeting, Brock Lesnar just got unceremoniously thrown out. It was completely glossed over, and frankly, he was in the match for like maybe a little over 5 minutes. And so it begs the question, if his entry and his exit aren't going to have any pomp or circumstance behind them, why are we doing any of this? Again, theoretically, maybe I should be happy. Hey, you didn't want to see this alleged sex pest. And he's not treated as a major part of the show. Fucking great. Awesome. Why did we bring him in the first place? Why are we even doing any of this? At this point, Brock's reemergence seems like a complete novelty. A shock move to pop a rating, as one may say. Except no ratings were popped. Nobody really cared to see him back, and now that he is back, we're not doing anything significant or even competent with him, so the fuck are we, what are we doing? What are we doing? It was toward this point in the match that everything really started to fall apart for me. Obafemi got eliminated. He was kind of a guy I would have liked to see make it to the end, because the stronger you make him in this match, the more momentum he has coming out of it. As it stands, having him be thrown out about midway through the match reeks of, again, a really lame half measure. Cody Rhodes got eliminated. Oh. Okay. Let's talk about Cody. That's something I have been known to do for reasonable amounts of time and not to spiral over. So, Cody Rhodes. Let's map out his world title journey so far. He returns to WrestleMania at WrestleMania 38. He's a surprise opponent for Seth Rollins. He feuds with Seth Rollins for 3 months before he tears his titty off the bone and is out for a full year. He comes back at the next year's Royal Rumble. He wins. He goes on to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 39. He loses, very famously. There is a year of, let's face it, filler before he gets to WrestleMania 40. He wins the Royal Rumble again, but maybe Rock's gonna take the match from him. But oh no, we're gonna do some other things, yada yada. He wins the world title at WrestleMania 40. He holds the world title throughout the next entire year. He holds it going into WrestleMania 41, at which point he loses it to heel John Cena with the help of Travis Scott. I'm not joking. This shit, I really hope I live to make a video about this shit, because so he loses the belt at WrestleMania 41, but he never really exits the world title picture. You know, he's always on that chase again. This heel beat me. And at SummerSlam, which is approximately 4 months later, he wins the belt back from John Cena. He enters a feud with Drew McIntyre. It's never ending until it ends with Drew McIntyre shock winning the belt just a scant month or so ago on SmackDown. And now Cody's in the Royal Rumble again to try and get into his 4th consecutive WrestleMania main event against Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. You don't need me to tell you that this would be a little bit of a stale choice. Well, I'm happy to report that Cody Rhodes does not win the Royal Rumble. He was eliminated by WWE Champion Drew McIntyre. So Drew McIntyre's character is that he's a stupid petty bitch who can't help himself. When he hates somebody, he is going to fuck them over, even when it's very obviously going to bite him in the ass. And so him coming into a match that he's not in to eliminate Cody from the Royal Rumble makes sense. The problem is, we're now on a build to Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre, which is a match that has been run 5 billion times in 5 months, and B, is the 4th consecutive WrestleMania main event for Cody Rhodes, and maybe, it's time to weed him off of that role. We don't need him in the main event. In fact, it would be very beneficial if you could either have him in the undercard having a good feud with a guy who needs establishment, or if you're gonna put him in the main event, put him against a young guy who needs establishment and not formal WrestleMania main eventer Drew McIntyre, who is on the coldest hot run of his career. At this point, the match has fallen apart for me because we are on the road to very disastrous choices for WrestleMania. End of the match. Let's skip to there. The final four in our Royal Rumble. God help me. Number 1, Logan Paul. To be fair and balanced to Mr. Logan Paul, he has been a part of WWE TV Weekly for a couple months. He is a part of a heel faction that is featured on TV. He's not as much of a part-timer as he was. He's also not half the wrestler a lot of people think he is, and in real life, Logan Paul is allegedly a serial scammer. Big crypto scammer guy. And I think it's really unfortunate that as a product of him being a somewhat competent wrestler, that has really laundered his image in the eyes of a lot of people, when this guy is kind of a scumbag scammer and really indicative of a lot of things that are wrong with the current influencer environment and also America as a whole. So I don't care to see him in this role. For however good Logan Paul may be as a heel, I think there is someone who is an actual wrestler who could do the job just as well. I think putting Logan Paul in this spot, and this is like the third Rumble he's reached the Final Four on, putting him in this spot is a waste. It's not an investment in the future. It's fucking Logan Paul in the Final Four of the Royal Rumble. What's he gonna do? Win? No. So don't stop putting him in that position. Just stop doing this. Number 2, Randy Orton. Randy Orton is old. He is established. He doesn't need a Royal Rumble win. He doesn't need a Royal Rumble Final Four appearance. I don't know. Again, it feels like a waste of a spot. It feels like he's in this Final Four just to be in it. People know and like Randy Orton, so whatever. It would have been a lot more productive to give this spot to a guy who needed it. Number 3, Gunther. Solid pick. Genuinely solid pick. You may be saying, but he wrestled earlier in the night. How is this allowed? And that's kind of the point, right? I think that double dipping on this is a really cool call. I think it would have been a cooler call if he won. I know it may seem frustrating for me saying, this guy's established and doesn't need this, but Gunther can have this and this and this and this and it's good. But the difference between a Gunther and a Randy Orton is that Randy Orton was in his getting accolades phase 10 years ago. More even, 15 years ago. Randy Orton is not a new guy on TV. He has enough name value and tenure that he is just a credible guy, regardless of how he does in, say, the Royal Rumble. Gunther, meanwhile, he's had a lot less time on WWE TV, meaning he is a fresher act. Tying him into the finale of this show, this Royal Rumble, I think, was a good idea. I was on board with it. Number 4, and your winner of the 2026 Royal Rumble was Roman Reigns. Oh. If you don't know who Roman Reigns is, sorry. You can find videos on the topic. Super Eye Patch Wolf made big Roman Reigns video. He's a big video essay guy. Just go watch that if you want to know the deal on who Roman Reigns is. Okay, so either you're caught up or you're still here. Suffice to say that Roman Reigns has been in the WWE's main event scene for over a decade. Roman Reigns has main evented the last 5 consecutive WrestleMania events. WrestleMania 37 to WrestleMania 41, and the only reason he didn't main event WrestleMania 36 was because COVID happened and he was immunocompromised. The Roman Reigns shit is getting very fucking old, and of all the decisions they could have made, Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, in my opinion, were the objective wrong choices. They were the most creatively bankrupt and uninspiring choices they could have made. To make matters worse, with Cody Rhodes seemingly going into a feud with Drew McIntyre, the most sensible thing to happen is Roman Reigns to face Raw's world champion, CM Punk. Roman Reigns faced CM Punk in a triple threat with Seth Rollins last year at WrestleMania in the main event. It's the main event of night 1 because WrestleMania is too nice now, in case you didn't know. And so this choice just isn't inspiring in the slightest. On top of this being a very stale choice, Roman Reigns is fully a part-time competitor. He will show up maybe 3 to 5 times a year if you're lucky. And I don't mean 3 to 5 matches, I mean 3 to 5 physical appearances. Case in point, Roman Reigns was announced for this Royal Rumble via JPEG. Just flashed an image saying Roman Reigns will be at the Royal Rumble, and that's it. He didn't even call in. He didn't even phone in an appearance. They just put up a picture and said, Roman. And hey, guess what? It's pretty likely that he won't show up for most of the TV dates in the road to WrestleMania, although, to be fair, that awaits to be seen. We don't know that yet, so we can't judge him for that yet. And as an aside, in a vacuum, Roman Reigns being a part-timer, I am fine with. This man is a cancer survivor. He can wrestle as much or as little as he damn well pleases. The problem is that when he is so central to the product, that his absence creates a massive hole. And when he takes those absences so frequently, it just feels like there's a big hole in the middle of the goddamn product. This leads one to wonder, what could have motivated the decision to do this? Normally, I would be the first to say Triple H isn't a very adventurous booker. He doesn't take a lot of chances, and he relies way too much on established names and established character dynamics rather than developing new ones at a healthy rate. But it seems like there's more of a backstage power struggle going on in relation to this decision. In case you didn't know, in 2023, WWE merged with Endeavor, the owners of UFC, to form TKO Holdings, and now TKO is essentially the parent company of the WWE. The WWE is not something that has ever had a parent company. It has had shareholders. It has been public since, I believe, the late 90s, but it has never had corporate ownership like this. Current power dynamics go a little bit like this. At the top is TKO Group Holdings and whoever is on that board. Next is the corporate suite, guys like Nick Khan, who is the president of the company, and then down a peg is Triple H, the current creative officer for the WWE. And in terms of influence over creative, let's say under him is like his writing staff and anyone whose job it is to make things, and also unofficially certain very influential wrestlers, guys like Roman Reigns or a Cody Rhodes, guys who have enough tenure and star power that they have some political sway backstage. You could also put women's stars like Becky Lynch or maybe Rhea Ripley, but honestly, you don't hear about political power struggles in terms of the women's division so much. Anyway, Triple H makes certain creative decisions that can be influenced by this corporate leadership. One such member of corporate leadership is Dwayne T. Rock Johnson, who became a member of TKO's board in 2024. This very famously enabled some attempted fuckery in regards to the WrestleMania 40 main event, in which The Rock seemingly tried to sweep aside Royal Rumble winner Cody Rhodes to instead have him face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. And the thing about Dwayne is that Dwayne is Roman Reigns' cousin. I think you can see where this is going. Suffice to say that Roman Reigns, through The Rock, or possibly through other means, or possibly through his own hard work and political influence, may have influenced the decision to have him win this match and put him in the main event of WrestleMania. It's possible, it's plausible, but it's not confirmed. I would say, if this were the case, this would be an example of backstage political power being used at the detriment of the current product and especially the building of younger stars. Roman Reigns should not be in this position again. And yet, it does all depend on the execution, on the whole road to WrestleMania thing, which I am intending to keep up with in the form of videos like this. But for now, that was the Royal Rumble in Riyadh. A really weird show that still wasn't as weird as I was expecting it to be. I was expecting the crowd dynamic to be really off with the Royal Rumble because the Royal Rumble is a very crowd-heavy show. It's a show that is built around, big pops behind surprise cameo appearances or shock debuts or returns or stuff like that. And while the crowd was a little quiet during stretches where maybe you'd hope they wouldn't have been, I don't think things were thrown off too bad. With that said, it was very weird to experience this show with the constant constant backdrop of this government propaganda. It's a really disheartening progression to see how WWE normalized these shows and has normalized its relationship with the government of Saudi Arabia, all while it seems to be trying to normalize its relationship with the current White House administration as well. WWE's involvement in politics has become extremely and uncomfortably prevalent in recent years. And even if you put that into the background, what Royal Rumble Riyadh was, it was a show that showed that, oh my fucking god. The Royal Rumble showed that there is a lot of rot in WWE's creative and especially in its men's main event scene. They need to build new guys. They're just not building new guys, and it's really not good for the product's longevity. They just need fresh ideas and ideally fresh creative voices, and they just haven't been doing that, and I don't know if they're even in a position to get that. In the end, I think it's going to make for an interesting road to WrestleMania to follow, because WrestleMania 40 was one of the best WrestleMania main event builds they have ever done. This is because it was very unpredictable and, seemingly despite itself, coagulated into a very exciting double feature main event sort of deal. Then the build to WrestleMania 41 was really weird and Travis Scott was in it. And now the build to WrestleMania 42 seems to also be weird, but this time thoroughly of their own design. This time there isn't the specter of John Cena's retirement hanging over the whole thing. Now there's going to be a lot more skepticism in terms of who is decided will main event and how, why, and when, and where, and who? Roman Reigns again? So yeah, subscribe please.